This is the Realty Classroom Podcast, episode number 79, Why You Should Hope It's Very Difficult. Are you a real estate agent with an entrepreneurial spirit who wants to turn your job into a business without sacrificing your lifestyle, but you just can't seem to find the right plan to help you get there? Well, then, hey, you're definitely in the right place. I'm Danny Griffin, the founder of the Realty Classroom and the host of this podcast. And to help you take immediate action to get started in the right direction if you're new, or build a better real estate agent business if you're already in it, I've created a free jumpstart course for you over at freeagentgift.com, especially to my fellow top producers who are in it. Slow down. Get started by asking yourself foundationally, am I set up correctly or am I just chasing ideas? All right, enough of that. Let's get going. Why you should hope it's very difficult. I know everybody wants the easy button. Everybody wants this job of selling to be easy. They want building the business to be easy. It's not. It's not ever going to be. In fact, there's no alternative business that I'm aware of where it's any great easy shakes. Everything is difficult. And it's like I was dealing with one of my kids. You know, I have 5 of them if you know me. I was dealing with one of them and I was understanding how he was going through this process of learning. He's a very smart guy, but I was introducing him to some new concepts. And what happened was he was trying to guess at how this really worked. Instead of just asking some basic questions and learning, his intellectual insecurity, which is normal for all of us, that's not a put down, that's just a status that we're all in when we're trying to learn and evolve. He was struggling to try to make up answers. Instead of just saying, geez, I don't know. Where could I go learn more about that? Learn, come back and give you the answer. And I think that's one of the places I want to get you set here before we start, is that we don't know what we don't know. The great Michael Gerber taught me that lesson pretty pointedly one time when I met him at the ripe old age of 80. Guy had figured a few things out by then. So I think it's important for you to understand that learning this is more about work ethic than anything else. So let me just put that as a foundation for this podcast here. And I'm going to start off with the first point here. Stuff gets real in real estate. I don't like to swear on the podcast because I'll get yelled at by my wife and a lot of other people, but you know what could stand for as well. Stuff gets real in real estate. What does that mean? It means that people really go haywire when they're buying or selling real estate. You can have the most intelligent person. You can even have an emotionally sound person, emotional intelligence off the charts. In real estate, gonna make you crazy, right? That's just what's going to happen. I don't know why, and maybe that's why I'm like the little bug that just can't wait to fly towards that blue light and do it again, and I get zapped, and I get zapped, and I get zapped. And it's enough to turn most people away from wanting to pursue a career in small business, let alone real estate, where we're dealing with this massive financial transaction. So I think anybody that's in this business, and especially for the top producers that are beginning to bring people on, don't bring people on with these false expectations or over-promising them things. Say, look, make sure on a scale of 1 to 10, you are motivated to get into real estate to help people, to guide people through one of the largest emotional transactions that they will ever make in their lifetime. I usually say emotional and financial. We get it on the finance side, but I want to focus today on the emotion of the consumer. And I want to teach you here what I have learned on how to help them get through that, because it's not a perfect science, but there is a way for you to become more self-aware. And that's why I started this podcast a little differently, asking you to be a good learner. Don't fight me. Don't fight yourself. Understand how things are working around you first, and then pay attention to how you can become a better servant in all of this chaos. That's the real point here. We are in a chaotic moment in time with somebody. Even, by the way, when sometimes they're not saying anything inside, they're bubbling up and they're getting mad, and you can't understand at the end of the transaction why they're mad at you. Well, we never gave them that outlet. So let me tell you a couple anecdotes that I have had. And the good thing about me teaching you this is I do this stuff. This isn't theory. I don't make this up week after week after week. In fact, it's a Sunday night when I'm recording this podcast. Here I'm sitting after spending a whole day of helping people through this emotional situation, and a whole week. So 7 days. Yes, I work this week on this business, in this business, doing this. And here's a couple of the anecdotes. My buyer and the math in fear. This is my first story. So I have a buyer who's a past client, and I dealt with her many years ago in a very emotionally charged situation where she was getting divorced. She had been in a situation for a very long time, was used to living a very particular lifestyle, only to find that all ripped away and challenged. And that's no big surprise in this business. We deal with divorce all the time. It's a big deal. The percentages in the divorce rate are just so astronomically high, you can't help but have to deal with domicile or home when that's all happening a lot. So we deal with it a lot. So in this case, she's done a fantastic job. I was so proud of her. What she was able to do to get her feet back under her. We found this fabulous condominium and it had a beautiful view, a penthouse that needed work that was fixed up, and she just did a nice job. And so I've always kept her in that circle of influence or sphere of influence by sending information, updates. This is why past client follow-up is important, updating her on how the market was doing. Well, somewhere along the line, that stimulated her to decide, I'd like to make a move. And in particular, the reason why, and because I always ask, well, why? We have this great situation you set up here. You've done a great job. It's a super place. Yes, but I've come to the point where I don't really like to be part of a condominium. I don't really be like being told what I can and cannot do around here. So it's time for me to go get my own single family house. And I also want to get into some investing in properties as well. So there was a real motivation and a real reason to buy. And I said, okay, that's reasonable. So in the selling side of the condominium, it was pretty straightforward. We sat down and we did the math. We looked at what the potential selling range could be. And with condominiums, it's a little bit easier because they're a little bit more apples to apples. So in one of my marketplaces, I do downtown Boston and Cape Cod. This was Cape Cod I'm talking about. It can be very difficult to price things in a tight range because we don't have a commoditized product. Everything is very different. But with condominiums, it's a little bit easier. So we could see the trend in what these condos were, and we could see that she had one of the best views and one of the best spots, and she'd done all the right updates, and she was ready to go. So we went through it, and we came up with a scenario where the high and the low, and I always cheat conservatively for my clients when I'm doing a net sheet to show them what they would walk away with. And this is where the math becomes really important in a way to deal with emotion. What I find is whether I knew somebody like in this case or I don't, I always go for the nickel tour of the property to see what condition it's in. I always reassure there's a real reason to sell because they're going to have to get into this harrowing process. I show them my 7 steps. We talk about the potential trading range or selling price range based on evidence, and I do a net sheet. That's it. And it's a very methodical, steady pace to empower somebody to understand where they are at that moment. And this all went perfectly well in this case. Everything went well. She understood it. She could see the number. And then subsequently on the buy side, we went out and began to look at properties. I don't know if she thought or I thought that we would find something quickly, but I'll plead guilty here. I probably should have given the buy side much more thought because we went out quickly. She saw something she liked, had a nice walkout where she could continue to rent rooms to exchange students, which she really enjoys doing and has done. And so I get into that position where we have a product quickly and we tie it up. And I can feel the fear beginning to bubble up. Now, we had her pre-qualified, so I knew exactly where she was at. I knew that she was plenty qualified to be able to do this deal. But what I wasn't recognizing enough in that moment of time was the fear was bubbling up inside of her. And it was based on the math. So we'd done one side of the math, but we really hadn't done the other. And so subsequently, we didn't get that deal. So everything calmed down. She decided to hold off on listing her property too. So things really started to get a little discombobulated here because I could see she wanted to see where she was going. And see, there's one of the big challenges with fear, especially when somebody's selling and buying. And we talk about it almost like it's common fare and we let it slide. It's a big deal in somebody's head. The fear of being left homeless when you are selling and buying is a very real thing, even though if you're with a good agent, and I say good agents, I'm going to have you all raise your standard. Don't ever put anybody in a position contractually where they have to sell and they don't have somewhere to go that's clear. Don't do that. Stop the whole process. Protect these people. So suffice to say, we had that conversation multiple times where she felt protected. However, when we went out to see the next property, it was even better than the first one we didn't get because it was a duplex and she could see the water from the front side of the duplex, which was a wonderful lifestyle upgrade from where she was at because she was closer to it. There was also subsequently a unit out back. So I got excited Knowing what I know, I'm like, oh my gosh, Eureka. She now goes even to, we didn't get that other deal, but just like buses that come along, here's an even better bus. Let's jump on this one. And I got excited knowing what I know, because I'm saying this is a no-brainer, same price range, but now she has rental income coming, easily qualified. Well, all of a sudden, on a Sunday afternoon, I got a text that I could tell was biting. And she was mad at me. And I could read between the lines. And I said, uh-oh, I'm not going to text back and forth with you. Let's meet tomorrow. And when we did, she came in steaming mad. And again, here's the moment where it's so easy to take it personally, as if to say, well, wait a minute. Am I not the one that helped you before? Am I not the one that helped you before? Me. Hear me? In my subconscious, in my mind, it's easy to get defensive. Why am I being attacked? I am. Hear that? It's in there, and it's subtle, and it's normal, and it's human. But as the consummate professional, we have to learn to check ourselves in that moment. Let that person have that moment. She's in the office. It's not like she blew me off and ran away. She's there. She's sitting down. She has this anxiety, and I'm listening. Subsequently, she brought somebody else with her because she was so worked up. I don't know what she thought she needed, but she brought some help and for moral support, somebody she worked with, even though she trusts me. But once it was all out on the table, all I said was, okay, let's slow down. Let's break out the two pieces of this. Did we go through the net sheet before? Yes. And it was it. Well, slow down. I have the net sheet ready to go again. Here's what the net sheet is. Does this look accurate on the sell side? Yes, it does. Okay, now remember, I want you to be conservative. Because during all this, she was like, let's take mine off and raise the price. Well, it doesn't work like that. We're already tickling the highest end of the asking price range and might be a little bit outside the range. You don't just make up the math that way and let the emotions dictate that's the way it's going to be. So we sat down and I said, this is what it is. I'm going to be able to do fine for you here, but this is what it is. Next, we roll over to the buy side. And this is the big revelation for me on this, right? Is that all of a sudden I recognize, you know what? We did not sit down when we moved off of the single family to the duplex, have the lender come in and sit down and do a worksheet. In fact, I kind of scratched my head and I said, how often do we really have the lender under our thumb to sit still and give our client a worksheet of what the principal, interest is, taxes, and insurance? And on Cape Cod, you might have flood insurance you have to include. So there's some variables, not a lot, not rocket science. But to give a good solid estimate of where that payment will be is pretty easy. So all of a sudden when we were done, I said, okay, we're good on the front end. I'm going to book an appointment with the lender to be here to walk you through everything. And I did that. And so after the meeting, that meeting with me and a friend, everybody was better. But then after the meeting with the lender, she was extraordinarily perfectly fine. All because we just listened, didn't take it personally, thought, hey, this is difficult, and this is what I'm supposed to be looking for as a businessman, businesswoman. If you're listening out there, ladies, you have to lean into those moments. You want it to be difficult because you want to question, what could I have done to have this client in a better position right now? Where am I still the problem? Not because I'm intentionally a problem, but because I've missed something. I haven't gone deep enough on something. That's that inventory moment when it gets difficult. But that's the most important moment because you're emotional, you're getting attacked, you're getting defensive, and it's me that's singing in your head. Don't do that. Listen, let her have her moment, solve the problem. That's still a live deal going out there, but everybody feels much better. Next point, my seller and the pain. Now, see, a lot of people are in tremendous pain when they're going through this process, and especially, I already did divorce, especially when there's been death. So as we pursue a lot of properties that have expired to try to see if we can help the people, not jam ourselves in there and get the listing and all that other stuff that drives me batty. We actually go in, we try to assess what went wrong, what's going on with these people. So yesterday, fresh off right into this podcast, yesterday, I went into a house and I got there a few minutes before the gentleman did. He came flying in and said, I made it on time. I said, no problem. I was just here a few minutes early. And I had looked around and I could tell that the owner, and I didn't know him and I didn't know the situation at the moment, the owner was a maintenance guy. Okay. He's a maintenance guy. Everything was done. I could see the windows had been upgraded. I could see that the paint was in great condition. Very few things on the exterior were out of whack. Good sign when you're going into a property trying to figure out what went wrong. We had a wonderful tour. We stayed outside. We had a wonderful tour outside, the pool. I mean, right down to where there was a water problem around the pool. He put a French drain. I mean, this is the guy that just goes above and beyond to get it right. So we start walking through the house. I see everything that has been upgraded, a few things that haven't, but they're immaculate. And we sit down, and I'm asking a few questions, but without really having to ask, I discover that he lost his wife, and a good solid 12 years ago. But the number of times that it was mentioned made it clear to me that this is in the room with us, and it's big. It's really big. And so I had a very slow, methodical pace. I did a lot of listening, but it's my job to still be a professional guide. So I went through my 7 steps, and about 5 in, I could feel his anxiety. So I went straight to the math. And I started to go over the math, and boom, something just triggered that pain. And he went off. And when I tell you he went off on me over and over and over. And I don't know what it is, whether it's just the years. And a lot of you that know me, you know I'm feisty. I like the octagon, right? And they had an MMA fighting when I was a kid. I'd have signed up first thing. I like a good scrap. But something is just different now. The more time that you put in, like the gal before this gentleman, I recognize the moment now. And the me story starts to quiet down, and something else now triggers. This was probably the singularly most difficult time face to face in an emotional explosion I can remember in my 20 years of doing this. Long time. And something just had me leaning in, physically too, not confrontationally. I don't mean it like that. We were close. I leaned in, and I just stared straight down the barrel of his eyes and had a very soft position physically. I think my arms were on the table, and I just took it all. Every single piece of what was coming to me. And the more that came out, I could just recognize pain. I could recognize it. And I could recognize, so I've gone from fear to pain, these two massive triggers when it comes to having to do this. And I had learned enough prior to that he wanted to move on with his life because his kids weren't coming down to the Cape anymore. And the new normal, as he called it, post losing his wife, sucked. I got it. I understood where I was at. And this anxiety of trying to get this thing moved emotionally, financially, all of that just came flying down the hill like an avalanche. And I just took it. And in there somewhere along the way, he referenced, after he, was upset with me and everybody else who does this for a profession for that matter, he mentioned, well, one of my friends said that I should do it, myself. So when he finally stopped, honestly, I just was worried that he was going to hurt himself and, physically, but he was in physically good shape, older gent, but I thought he was in great shape. And so softball player, et cetera. So make a long story short, the guy just stops. I said, look, I came here to give you the best piece of advice. You suggested that you try to sell this yourself. The best advice I can give you at this moment in time that's exactly what you should do. I'll give you the name of my photographer. You need to memorialize how beautifully this place is looking right now. Capture it on film. Get it there. And then there are MLS entry only companies that will put you up into the MLS, and you should offer the same co-broke fee you were offering through a full service company prior to me. And I just let it be. Because he had given me that in all of that noise. I was able to pick up a few pieces of how can I help this guy just move out of this place he's at? How can I get him to the next spot? If you think you can do this by yourself, let me be the one that guides you how to do it next. And that was it. And so I got up. I said, I'm going to let you be now. I'm going to get up. Appreciate you having me over. Sorry that it triggered that kind of a conversation. And I started to walk to the door. And he moved swiftly with me to the door. And something was telling me, this guy wants to talk some more. I could feel everything just coming down a little bit, behind me, have good sensory perception, city kid who's behind me, right? And he just calmed down. And I would tell you about an hour later, I got in my car and I drove away knowing that I had done the best I could to bring his pain down and give him the best guidance. We'll be following up, suffice to say. So you just couldn't believe that in a 2.5 hour span, I'm never out of the house that long anymore. I'm efficient. It's 45 minutes plus or minus every time. But given these circumstances, it was a calling. That's what we do this business for. That calling, that moment when that person in fear and in pain comes to that spot. And that's the final point here. It's really about who you must become to be successful. I could teach you technique and tactic and ideas until the cows come home. But you have to become an emotionally secure person and understand that oftentimes in this business, whether it's fear that starts it in the middle of a divorce and they get emotional, or pain from loss, I've lost a loved one and that's why I'm emotional, and myriad other reasons why people get emotional, you must understand it's going to happen a lot. You can't give the voice, oh my gosh, here we go again. It's the business we're in, and you need to accept it because there are so many variables that cause it. But those who will become the most successful at this understand me has no place in our head in the very difficult moments. Those are the moments calling us to the highest calling of being a real estate agent. Okay? So let me go back through those points. Why you should hope it's that difficult. Number one, stuff gets real. People get real and they can't hold back. The fear, the pain, the anger, the frustration all comes pouring out and right at you. I told you about my buyer. It was based in math fear. The minute we went through a lot of the math on both the sell side and the buy side, we empowered her. And the fear was punched in the face by her own empowerment. Next, the seller. Time, patience, perseverance, listening, and knowing that, hey, I might not get this one at all. He might not list with anybody, but just to hang in there and help him overcome that pain and leave him at least better than the moment that had just been created. And that's what I did. And it's all about who you become. So continue to work on yourself emotionally. That's how you get successful. So you have to understand the true emotional toll that buying and selling real estate takes on the consumer, and know that sooner or later, they will lash out at the world, including you. Don't take it personally. Rather, understand it's those that persevere that become the most successful real estate agents. Hey, remember, you can take immediate action and get started in the right direction with our free simple business plan. I know there's not many out there, but I have one for you. It's at freeagentgift.com. Also, don't forget to subscribe to this podcast so that you don't miss out on any insights each time we upload an episode. We also broadcast our live sales training calls on Facebook and YouTube every Friday at 1 ET. We really get in there with nitty gritty. We actually play some recorded calls so you can hear what it's like to help the consumer on the other end. So remember, turn on those page and channel notifications for the Realty Classroom so you won't miss the reminders. We'd also appreciate it a lot. I would a lot if you would share our content with other entrepreneurial real estate agents just like you so they get the help that they need. Hey, thanks for listening. And remember what I say to you guys and gals all the time. Nobody's coming for you. So go get to work on your own business. I'll see you in the next episode.